name is Michael Ballard. I am a student in the Public Policy and Administration program at St. Petersburg College. Today, I'll be covering a current case study taking place in Pinellas County. This is a case study impacting real people, real communities, and will leave a lasting impact beyond that. In this case study, we will go over the past history of this item and the municipality you'll be relating to, in addition to the past laws that will be impacting this current case study. We will discuss how, what, where, and the whys that influence this issue. We will go over the stakeholders involved in this issue, and remembering Miles' law, where one stands depends upon where one sits. Because of that, we will look into their perspectives, what motivates them, what drives them, and ultimately, what is their stance on this issue. After that, we will meet with our person in the field. This person is an expert in their craft. They have years of experience. I will ask them questions relating to this case study. What's their take on it? Why are they pushing for this item? And specifically, what is their piece of information for future public policy students? After receiving this information and attending the City Commission meeting, where I will be delivering a 3-minute speech, we will make a personal recommendation. After receiving all the facts, we will give our take on this matter. Remember, in the public policy program, it is our job to make a recommendation that is sound, of mind, and is neutral. We have to make sure that we, in the end, respect the communities that we are working with. This project will be engaging, it'll be exciting, and ultimately, it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to presenting this real issue, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. Thank you. We're going to be doing a presentation for the September 3rd City of Largo City Commission meeting and an ordinance relating to increasing the millage rate for budgets. Let's get started. Before we start, I would like to give a special recognition and thank you to City of Largo City Clerk Diane L. Bruner, Intern Manager for the City of Largo Office and Performance of Budget, Brooke Bailey, and Director of the City of Largo Office of Performance and Budget, Will Payne. They all were extremely helpful in providing me any information that I needed, in addition to giving me feedback on any issues that I had, giving me a meeting at a last minute notice, which was very helpful. I know that especially times are I know that a lot of times schedule wise can be very chaotic. So with their help, it was really influential, and I got to give them a huge thank you. Moving onwards, we are going to talk a lot. Today's agenda, this is a very complicated item, but we're going to try to go over it as quick as we can. We're going to talk about the intro to the case study, background information, the history, the case study item, the issue, the cost-benefit analysis, the stakeholders, meeting our expert, the city commission meeting, the status of the item, and our personal recommendation. The case study item of focus is going to be City of Largo Ordinance number 2024-54- first reading establishing a property tax rate for the fiscal year 2025. In our introduction, we are going to be talking about how powerful budgets are. Specifically, they are a vital, powerful, influential, complicated, but complicated and misunderstood aspect of government and public policy. Budgets have a lot of use and potential for making change, and there are many rules and legislative conditions that apply to budgets and budget-making procedures. We're also going to talk about where budgets get their money from. Specifically, I've added, as stated previously, budgeting is a powerful and influential tool of local and state governments. And with proper budgeting and budget making, you can make a lot of change, especially in the public policy field of government. One thing I want you all to take home today is that if you are going to work in the public policy field, and especially working in public policy, budgeting is vital. An understanding of budget making, budget presentation. Those are all keystone aspects of public policy, and it's very important to understand how to do it and how to excel in doing it. I have some quotes here from the International Monetary Fund, in addition to the Florida Government Finance of Officers Association, that has information relating to how vital budgets are. I think that they're all really interesting to look at. One thing that we need to look at is that there are many pieces to consider when budget making at the state and municipal level. Specifically, there's a quote here from economist Will Feather, which I think is very interesting. Specifically, a budget tells us what we can't afford, but it doesn't keep us from buying it. That is a luxury that is afforded to the federal government as they can take on debt. But for many
but for all municipal and local governments, they don't have that ability. They cannot take on debt, and if there are punishments, and specifically, they do have to go through a bunch. There are complications that do arise from that, and punishments that do result if they do go over a budget. So they have to be very careful with spending. They have to be very careful with planning, establishing their budgets, and if they go under that budget, a lot of times that can impact their future budget. Specifically, it's important to consider state statutes and recent legislations, as they do have a lasting impact on state and municipal budgeting. And to wrap it up, at least for this area, everything doesn't happen in a budget. There's always new changes happening in local and state governments when it comes to budgeting, when it comes to specifically laws that can happen in other neighboring communities that might be noticeable, or at least budget makers might have to take in mind and consider for future budget making. Further on, we are specifically going to talk about statutes in the Florida, specifically Florida statutes that impact budgeting. We have Statutes Chapter 166, which specifically authorizes municipalities to a set of actions necessary to conduct activities and provide vital sources. For this case study, we're going to be focusing on the ability to levy taxes and adopt a balanced budget. This is necessary because this this gives municipal, states, and local governments the power to take the revenues that they need to establish their budgets. This is a necessary piece because in order to provide services, you got to have the resources to do so. We're also going to talk about Florida Statutes 200. This establishes procedures for adopting local government annual budgets and appropriating and for the development of an appropriate balanced budget in which anticipated revenues and expenses are equal. We're also going to talk about ad valorem taxes, aka property taxes. These are taxable property values from the preceding year. These are extremely useful as property taxes are a major source of income for cities to use in their municipal budgets. One thing I want you all to take home today, in addition to the power budgeting, is that property taxes, especially for municipal governments, are a huge source of revenue for them. It's one of their major sources of revenue, and it's one of the most important things to consider when you are making your budget. How much money can you get on property taxes, and how much value is in your property, because that can be the difference between ensuring that resources are provided and having to cut back on services. Further on, specifically state and local budgets, they do generate their revenue streams from a variety of sources, ranging from federal government support to taxes, and then divide you further down to property, total, corporate, and selective sale taxes. The general revenue percentage for state and revenues returns can vary from state to state, and even more interestingly, from region to region of the United States. It's not all the same. Some states might rely more on property tax than other. Some other states might rely more on income and specifically corporate tax. However, with the state of Florida, most of the tax requirements do come from property tax, and we're going to show you that right now. For state and local general revenue, I looked at the Tax Policy Center. As you can see, it's really interesting to look at how much of a state relies on property tax. As you can see, Florida, for the southeast region of the United States, generates a pretty considerable amount, $186,000 for their general revenue. If you were to round it up, it's 187,000 because of the five there if you were to round it up, but we're just going to do 186,000 just because we're kind of in a rush. But as you can see, they rely on 22.4% of their total revenue from the federal government for the fiscal 2021 year. However, of the total, specifically, I guess if you were to look into the total taxes, that counts for 76.6%, or the total 46.9%, because there's like total taxes that didn't diverge from here and then from the revenue stream. But of the total, specifically 51.1, or the 46.9%, 17.8%, almost half, if you're looking into specifically if you were to add both factors to each other, almost half of that comes directly from property taxes, which is a huge source of revenue because there is no income tax for the state of Florida. Moving onwards, we have a majority of municipalities, including many local governments. In Florida, property taxes are the largest source of returning revenue and is a major contributing source of a city's operating budget. We have properties and ad valorem taxes. They are calculated by a majority of factors, but specifically today, we have a little graph down here. This is the simple version, but specifically there's like the market value, the assessment difference, all that is specifically added down and then subtracted, in which we have taxable value. Taxable value then goes into the multiplication by millage rates, which are specifically they are set by taxing authorities such as municipal governments, and millage rates can be raised or lowered if passed in a majority vote by the city commissioners during a public city commission meeting. There are no restrictions to specifically for a millage decrease. However, there are procedures in place and legislative pieces that specifically have raised restrictions and specifically put on additional rules for a municipality to raise the budget. So there is that to consider, especially when adopting maximum millage rates, which when you multiply that by the taxable value does equal ad valorem, or in this case, property taxes. Moving onwards, we're going to talk about the history of the item. Every year, municipal governments, such as the city of Largo, they are required to generate an annual budget. These budgets take in information from a wide range of sources, ranging from citizen feedback, citizen specifically forums and feedbacks, reports on local economic markets, the housing environment, impacts from policies, and the likelihood of climate regarding federal funding. However, especially in more municipal areas, local property taxes impact, they are a major source of municipal government. So the take home of this is that they have to generate a budget, and budget makers they really have to look into the property taxes of what they're returning from property taxes, in addition to, I guess, the total politics, the legislative side of things. When making their budgets, they also have to look into the cost, specifically making budgets. They have to consider the rising cost of labor, the need of cost for personnel, viability of the local housing market for local employees, in addition to those who might be impacted from commuting from other areas, and look into the expenditures from last year, as this case is for the city of Largo. Now we're going to be talking about the city of Largo expenditures. There has been a general rise of at least 500,000 from the fiscal 2022 to the 2023 year. And if you compare that with the fiscal 2024 year, there's actually a rise of $3 million, which specifically we're going to talk about the reason why later on. But it's very interesting to see that the estimated was specifically going to be 20.7 million, which means that the city actually needed to spend an additional specifically, I think I said needed to spend an additional $5,000 just to provide the services that they do, in which case kind of shows when they are establishing their budget for the 2025 year, which is 23.8 million. Here's sort of the graphs containing feedback from the citizens of Largo. You can kind of see that the forms are stretched out, specifically compared. It's very interesting to look at where people get their where people are at least getting their sampled information from. In addition to the changes in needs, we kind of have community pride, sustainability, public health and safety, which are then trickled down into micro needs, or specifically micro aspects, which are then specifically compared to each other. As you can see, there is a change in overall needs, which are impacted by international and national events that happen in and out of the community, which do specifically change what people want to see. We are going to talk about impacts specifically in the Florida House that does impact raising budgets. In 2017, the Florida House of Representatives passed a legislative item in 2017, specifically House Bill CS-HJR 21, which took effect in 2019. It specifically put limitations on the raising of property taxes for municipal governments to use in their budgets, which impacts and limits their ability to collect revenue for needed services that they provide to people of their communities. And more recently, House Bill CSHB 1195 in 2024 was going through the motions, in which if it was passed, the bill would technically require a certain majority vote depending on the rate of increases for the upcoming millage rate, although it did die in the appropriations on the Senate at March 2024. The bill has been stated by the city of Largo for being a contributing reason for their upcoming ordinance relating to the rising, or at least stabilizing, of the millage rate. Now we're going to talk about the history of this item. Now that we got some background information relating the past, specifically needs of information, the city of Largo, they established a millage rate maximum proposal of 6.0335 and sent it to the City Commission Board to approve or deny on the July 25th, 2024 City Commission meeting. There were some worries among the people of Largo with one homeowner, Michael Faustini. He stated that he didn't expect the millage rate proposal to be that high. From a TBN article, the item was presented by Largo Budget Director Will Payne, who gave multiple options in millage rate recommendations that were lower than the maximum. The board approved the millage rate with a vote of 6 for and 1 against. The one vote that was being casted against was set by City Commissioner Michael Smith. He did not give a reason why for voting against it. But we also have City Commissioner Jamie Robinson, who was among one of the people who said yes, and he has addressed the people of Largo, saying that the commission will most likely select a millage rate that is lower than the maximum cap rate. Our cap rate, I apologize. The city, now that they have a maximum millage rate, which was approved, the budget director, Will Payne, has set a recommendation for the city commissioner's office, city commissioners, where he will ask to implement and or put into place a millage rate of 5.5200, which is the same millage rate from the city's 2024 budget, which is lower than the capped maximum rate, which was 6. I think it was like 6 from the last slide. I apologize. This option to keep the same millage rate as the same as last year's millage, specifically to keep the millage rate, it would allow the city to generate an additional $2.773 million, or 7.10% increase in the general fund property tax revenue compared to other options. And has been noted by the agenda item report, this request would allow the cities to continue providing needed services during the current restraints from rising inflation and rising demands for talent and infrastructure. The city has also used this year's and last year's funds, in addition to federal grants and federal funds, for a multitude of projects ranging from affordable housing units, online software for municipal departments, technology for police departments, in addition to stormwater and system maintenance upgrades. With this case item, if the proposed millage rate stabilization and increase in property tax revenue option is not approved by the City Commission Board, there is a second item that was proposed by Budget Director Will Payne. This is technically known as the rolled back property tax rate, with a new and lower millage rate of 5.1897, which is a lower millage rate, but the lower millage rate would have to rely on specifically additional revenue from new construction and future annexations by the city of Largo in the same budget year, which would technically be less for taxpayers. However, with the rising operation costs and need for newer workers that can be incentivized to work for the city municipal government, and the possibility of needing to rebudget and cut services to match the lower budget, this would be a riskier move and possibly specifically limit feedback of services, and is considered a gamble to rely on unforeseen factors, as available land for construction is limited in the city of Largo compared to the past few years. The issue relating to this case study is specifically is going to be for the city commissioners and for the people of Largo on deciding to implement a millage rate that is a millage rate option that would be set to a millage rate that can be most beneficial to the cities and residents of Largo and the surrounding areas, i.e. to vote yes or no on this proposed millage rate proposed by the city manager on the first reading ordinance number 2024, first reading establishing a property tax rate for fiscal year 2025. If declined, the city commission, city of Largo, and Department of Budgeting would have to work on creating a new millage rate proposal and or look into the rollback tax rate. We have a cost benefit analysis chart specifically looking into the benefits and the cost of each specifically option. We have the proposed millage rate versus the rolled back millage rate. As you can see, the benefits specifically for the millage rate is that it would generate $2.7 million for the city, which would be an increase of $2.8 million compared to last year's budget. It is more reliable and set in stone and less risky for revenue returns compared to alternative millage/budget options, and would be used to ensure that salaries for people in the public work department, in addition to first responders, people working in government departments, can be able to have steady salaries in addition to the continued preservation and protection of our wetlands, parks, promoting special events that generate commerce and tourists, be used for wastewater improvement projects, in addition to meeting the increased demand for services and raising inflation costs that is necessary to provide services that a lot of businesses in the city of Largo demand. The cost is that it will cost homeowners and businesses an additional fee of $26 to $32 per year, and possibly impact local homeowners and future developers to move in just because of the slightly higher cost of developing. But compared to the benefits, the rollback millage rate is less costly, but it is outweighed by the cost, specifically because there is unknown impacts. But it is stated that it would specifically impact on the city having to reduce services and jeopardize future projects that the city of Largo would need to do, specifically after school services, wastewater improvements, fire and rescue, police department services, and require a new rollback property rate to go through the first hearing and legal process to become put in, which will take time, and it will take a lot of time and labor necessary. We are going to now talk about the stakeholders. These are people that are directly impacted by the budget itself and have a key, specifically input with this ordinance and are going to be affected by it. We have stakeholders: Mayor Woody Brown, City Commissioner Michael Smith, Commissioner Curtis Holmes, Commissioner Eric Gerald, and Jamie Robinson, all of which have experience being involved in specifically Rotary clubs, advisory boards. They're involved in a lot of community engagement projects as well as municipal projects and communities, a lot of which relate to after school programs, first response, working with the Library Commission, specifically working with specifically community engagement projects. I wanted to focus on Commissioner Michael Smith because he was one of the people that has voted against the millage rate in the past commission meeting and will most likely be against this item based on his past involvement with this. He is involved in historical advisory committees that would be impacted by this millage rate, specifically the continued service of it. In addition, I wanted to focus on Commissioner Jamie Robinson, who has specifically voted yes to this item in addition to the other 6 commissioners. But Commissioner Jamie Robinson has went to the public and to the press and has stated that the city of Largo will most likely select a lower millage rate, which is a key factor to consider when he is making his decision. We have Commissioner Donald Hollock, Commissioner Chris Johnson, all of which are a part of the 6 commissioners who have voted yes on the maximum millage rate. They both are involved in specifically after school youth services, formal involvement in communities and businesses that works in ensuring that there are provided services. They have a lot of stakes and ties to community projects that would be impacted by it. We have the City of Largo Performance and Budget Department Executive Director Will Payne, who himself is proposing and demonstrating on this item to the City Commission Board for the past City Commission meetings. And on the future meeting for the September 3rd meeting, he is in favor of this item and has said that when meeting in person, that any other budget / millage alternatives could drastically reduce services and municipal operations for the City of Largo. We have the City of Largo citizen Matthew Faustini, who he did state that he was surprised by the original TRM rate relating to the maximum proposed millage rate. Specifically, there is no information about his stance. However, he could be impacted by the new rising fees. We have the public employees for the City of Largo homeowners and citizens, and people in neighboring communities, all of which would be impacted by the cutting of services that is necessary for the City of Largo to continue the services. Therefore, all of which would most likely be in favor, but also could be affected by the additional revenues or increased costs that goes on to them. I was able to meet with Will Payne, who is the Performance and Budget Director for the City of Largo. I asked him a few questions relating to how will this impact city business matters and other specifically aspects of this millage rate. Specifically, he has talked about his experience working in the City of Largo, his experience working with budget and millage rate departments. We're going to have to go through these a little bit quickly, so please feel free to pause this. We're going to continue onwards with the next question. He talked about the millage rate, if, by it being set in place, or the increase or stabilization will have specifically, it is one of the key factors in determining taxes. However, it does vary on a case-by-case example, and the cost does have a minimal effect on homeowners. And I asked if there were any services that the city could provide if people were negatively affected by the rising costs, in which he said there are municipal organizations and ministries that could provide these resources if needed. In addition, I asked about the rollback property tax option, which would be the second option for the city to look into. And he said that specifically, when looking at the current housing environment for the City of Largo, the rate of new constructions has decreased compared to Largo 5, 6, or 7 years ago. And because of that, with limitations on property taxes from the specifically Florida House with past legislations and the uncertain environment of relying on future developments and annexations that can take time and or may not happen, there is a lot of risk that is put into the rollback tax rate that, if passed, would require new decision making and deplete the current fund balance, in addition to limiting what services can be provided by the City of Largo. In addition, it would limit their 5-year plan. Specifically looking at it, I asked about what are the impacts of homeowners, and he said that this would probably, or that it does depend. Specifically, there is the Homestead Act to look into, and that this new development would cost homeowners 26 to 34 dollars a year. I put in month, but let me just put in years right now. But specifically, there is the annual cost per year of newer properties which are impacted. However, the impact is very minimal. I asked him what was his experience for newer public policy students, and he said that specifically read as much as you can, study. There are new developments, newsletters, and case studies that are happening in local municipal governments that can be applied to our community. Be open to unusual opportunities that may present themselves, and understand that most of what you learn is while on the job and or out in the field. We're going to talk about the meeting itself.
624 Circle, Seminole. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commission members, for allowing me to be here tonight and speaking on this item. Specifically, I wanted to start off by recognizing all your involvement to the community, all your volunteering involvement. When I was doing research on everyone here on the table, I recognized all your involvement to supporting the communities, representing people, and that's really a huge part of being representative in the community. And specifically, when it comes to, I was really impressed with your volunteering and engagement to many programs in Pinellas County. As a former SGA member and active St. Petersburg public policy student, we learned the key points of creative networking can be a powerful engagement tool, and to never underestimate a well-designed budget. After all, the art of budgeting is one of the most important but least understood aspects of government. I know that there may be some headway and reaction in the Florida House, specifically with pass and place limitations on property tax increases, in addition to proposals to entirely eliminate property tax. As stated before, property taxes is one of the biggest control ways to establish finances and ensure that services are delivered smoothly. I can see from the perspective of the importance of establishing this new millage rate, and my stance on the matter is in support of this aspect, specifically to help bring in talent and influential workers to be able to work and be closer to the city of Largo. From a report from the City of Largo Community Development on December 12th by the Partners of Economic Solutions Department, many of those employed by the City of Largo have difficulties finding housing in the community and often have to commute from other areas. In addition, the Data USA, specifically the median household income, has increased by 10.4% from 2021 to 2022. But at the same time, the property value for homes in the same community has rose by 20%, specifically as values for homes continue to rise up, and mainly due to a supply and demand aspect. As there's less land available now, I can see why it's important to make sure that revenues are supplied to ensure maintenance, to keep workers at least be closer to the communities that they work in, because after all, it is vital to have a sufficient, specifically, you want to have people that represent your community if they are providing those services. Specifically, I also see that there have been issues with finding property closer to the occupations. I believe that if this matter is passed, it will be essential to providing resources to ensure that services are provided that gives support to everyone in the field. In addition, I also believe that specifically to address some communications with people, I believe that communication with homeowners, looking into addressing and sharing promotional opportunities in the college or in the community is a great opportunity. In addition, looking into grants. I apologize for going over, but thank you.
Thank you.
On the meeting, I was able to deliver my presentation on the item. Specifically, I was able to give my presentation, thoughts on the item itself, and discuss the ordinance being necessary to ensure services are provided. And I can see why there's some homeowners who might question the increase in the property values. The result of the city meeting was that following a thorough presentation by the City of Largo Performance and Budget Director Will Payne, the item went to the City Commission Board for a vote where, considering the millage rate would require a super vote of 5-2. The item passed with 6 city commissioners voting in favor of the proposed millage rate, with a singular vote being set against it by Commissioner Michael Scott, who has voted against this in the past relating to the maximum millage rate. I have my presentation time, and specifically 46.33 to 46.42. This is going to be in the references at the end if you want to click on the link and see my presentation. Now we're going to talk about the result of the meeting and future action. So what's next is that now that the item has been passed by the City Commission Board, the item will now go on to its second reading, which will be held on September 18th, 2024 by the City Commission meeting and is one step forward to being implemented. A recent article explaining the millage rate from TBN Weekly has said that the millage rate will cost homeowners an additional $26.34 in property taxes. And from the aspects of the meeting, the additional revenue will most likely focus on tackling local watershed and wastewater systems from citizen feedback, specifically stating a need for that, especially with the extreme weather. My feedback on this item, or my personal recommendation, I believe that the actions followed by the City Commission and the passing of the recommended millage rate is the best option for the residents for the City of Largo, although I can see why the increase in prices can be controversial. The suspension and drawbacks of municipal services would be detrimental. With the new millage rate, and additional revenue would be able to go towards the maintenance and upkeep of our stormwater and wastewater systems, which can better handle extreme weather events in addition to other needed services. I know that we went through a lot. Thank you so much for bearing with me. If you have any questions or comments based on my presentation, please feel free to contact my business card. Please feel free to send me a call, text, email. I'm open to whatever, anything that you need. If you want any of the resources that I use, I would be happy to provide them to you. In addition, here are my resources, specifically the City of Largo City Presentation. If you want to click on that and feel free to go to that, it is open to everyone to see. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you. And